Hi everyone, my name is Stacy Brown. I'm a senior consultant at Brittonford Systems and have worked with them for over 6 years. I'm a Microsoft Dynamics GP certified professional as well as a Microsoft certified trainer. Today you'll be listening to the GL Basics training class. We'll review customizing the GL setup, adding new accounts, posting and unit, entering and posting GL transactions. We will review the key inquiry screens and reports, and we'll review the process for period close. I encourage everyone to ask questions by clicking on the chat button in the bottom left corner. To expand the view for sharing so you can see my screen, please click on the bottom right button that looks like a square with arrows leaving the square. If you're ready to ask questions at any time, just click on your exit key and it will return you back to the chat. All right, let's begin. First, we're going to talk about customizing the general ledger. To customize the general ledger, we're going to use the new navigation. We're going to click on Financial in the bottom left corner. You'll notice here that the expansion has setup, transactions, inquiry, utilities, routines, cards on the side, and I have reports expanded. With the new feature of GP 2013, we can expand each section alone. So I'm going to expand the setup by clicking on the little box in the top right section. I'm then going to browse to set up Financial General Ledger. This is the General Ledger setup screen. The information at the top is informational and will increment by one once every time a journal entry is posted. So here we have our next journal entry number. We have our next budget journal entry number, which is new in GP 2010. And our next reconciliation number of 2, which is new in GP 2013. Over here on the bottom, on the top right, we have the display. This is for our inquiry screens and is by default only. So we have net change or period balance. And we'll discuss the difference later on in the session. We have our retained earnings window, where we can choose if we want to close to a divisional account segment, and where we define our retained earnings account. We have maintain history. I suggest that all 3 boxes be checked at all times. When we maintain history for accounts, transactions, and budget transactions, and run the year-end close, our historical data is kept. If the boxes are unchecked, when we run the year-end close, all of our information and drill down functionality is lost. Next, we have the Allow section. We have Posting to History. This is going to allow you to post to one historical year back. In Dynamics GP, you can post to as many open years as you have and one historical year back. And what I mean by historical year is when we run a year-end close, that makes the year a historical year. We have deletion of saved transactions. Now, most of my clients, it's probably about a 50-50 basis on whether they have this box checked or not. A deletion of saved transactions, that means when you enter a journal entry, you can, and save it to a batch, you can then delete that journal entry. If you have the back box unchecked, the only way to remove the saved transaction is to void it. When you void the transaction, a posting journal will print and will show amounts of 0 for each of the accounts. Voiding or correcting of subsidiary transactions. I always suggest to my clients that we leave this box unchecked. This box will prevent users from voiding transactions in the general ledger that originated from the subsidiary modules. For example, if we enter an invoice in payables and post it through to the general ledger, we don't want to void that in the general ledger because that will make our payables module and our GL module out of balance. We also have the back out of intercompany transactions. This box is unchecked. You will not be able to back out any transactions that have intercompany information. Most of my clients have this box checked. And then lastly, we have the Update Accelerator information. This feature is rarely used in GP. Most of our clients print their financial statements out of FRX or Management Reporter, so they don't need this function. It is used only for financial statements printed from within GP. You'll notice we have a reporting ledger section. This is new in GP 2010 and future releases. It allows you to have multiple ledgers recording data. So if you have your corporate book and then you need one for international reporting, we can have two separate ledgers. If the allow box is unchecked, that means you have one ledger, and most of our clients only have one ledger. Then at the bottom here, you have user-defined field labels. These user-defined field labels are used in the account setup window and allow you to define additional information for accounts if you choose to do so. Does anybody have any questions about the GL setup? No? All right, we're going to proceed to account categories. So to define our account categories, we're going to go to Setup, Financial, and then Account Category. Here, as I expand the window, you'll see there are 48 predefined account categories. These account categories are linked to the quick financial statements in GP and make the system decide where the account should print in those quick financial statements. It is recommended that you keep the descriptions similar. For example, you don't want to change account category number 7, prepaid expenses, to long-term receivables, because that makes it an asset where it used to be a liability. See, the quick financial statements don't use the descriptions to decide where it should print in the report, but instead use the numbers beside them. If you need additional categories, you can always click on a new row at the very bottom, and you'll notice that there's a star here. So here we can have international fees. We can add as many new categories as we would like, but you'll want to note that these do not automatically add to the quick financial statements. So if an account has the title for this category, it will not automatically print on those quick financials. The next thing I want to talk about is account segments. A lot of times when I go into clients, I'll notice that their segment IDs are not defined, which can make for your chart of accounts to look a little unorganized in the fact that the descriptions are all different. Usually what I suggest doing is defining all of the main account segment definitions and leaving the department and division undefined, so that all your expenses say utilities expense. If you want it to say something like utilities expense dash administration, then we could probably define your account and your department. So I'm going to select account here. If we do the lookup, you'll notice that none of our segments are defined. So I'm going to click on 1100 here. I'm going to enter the definition of cash. What this allows the system to do is when I go to set up an account, which we'll go over shortly, and I enter in 1100, you'll notice now it automatically defaults with a blank space, a dash, the word cash, which is what I defined as the 1100 definition, and then another dash and a space, and that's for the last segment, 00. The more information you fill out in your account segment definitions, the less information you have to fill out when you're entering in the description for an account. Somebody has a question. They said, so why shouldn't I put a description for all segments? I've noticed that some of my clients, not all segments have a concrete definition. It says the definition is division, but they'll use each identifier in that segment to mean something else. So usually they only define the main segment, or they define two segments, so say account and department. Next, we're going to go to add new accounts. So we're going to go to the cards window. So I'm going to go over here to the bottom left, and I'm going to click on the expansion button. Here under cards, we're going to go to financial and then account. Here is where you're going to create your posting accounts. These are your accounts that are going to affect your general ledger. When you have a posting account, there must be a debit and a credit side of a journal entry to balance. So here I'm going to pull up an expense account. Here we fill out our account number. We have our description, which is required. Here we have accrued expenses. We have our alias, AE, which means when we're entering in our journal entry, we can type in AE and it'll define the account for us. It's supposed to speed up journal entry. We have the inactive box here. When this is checked, a journal entry cannot be entered for that account. We have the allow account entry button. This button is a very interesting button and can throw people off sometimes. The checkbox means that a user cannot physically type in 00211000 into a journal entry. But if I have it set up in the system to default, for example, my accounts payable account, I could have a generic accounts payable account of 2,000 and have it unchecked to allow account entry. This will prevent people from entering a GL entry to my accounts payable account, but will automatically default for my payables entry people when they're entering in invoices or cutting checks. Okay, so if the allow account entry box is checked, somebody can manually type in the account for the journal entry. If the box is unchecked, it can only default from system setup information. Next, you'll notice category. This category is the 48 we just recently discussed, plus the 49th one that I've created, international fees down here. Remember, this is a required field, and whatever you select will affect where the account prints on your quick financial statements. You have your posting type, balance sheet, and profit and loss. This is very important because when you close the year, a balance sheet account's balance will be brought forward in the system if it's marked as a balance sheet account. If it's marked as profit and loss account, it'll close to retained earnings. I have a lot of clients at year-end close who have set up accounts throughout the year that are set up incorrectly, and then there's a long process that you have to complete to correct the closing entry. Underneath of it, you have typical balance. So it was the typical balance of the account, debit or credit. This is going to affect how it shows up in your inquiry screens, whether it's going to be a positive balance or a negative balance. It also affects FRX and Management Reporter on whether they show up as positive or negative numbers. Level of posting from series. Sales, inventory control, purchasing, and payroll all default to detail. And I suggest you keep it that way because what that allows the system to do is when you're entering in an invoice and say you have multiple distribution lines that include that account, you want that detail to flow to the GL entry. You don't want it to summarize the information in the general ledger. So you want to make sure those are detail. The include lookup defaults to all accounts, but we can restrict it to only certain submodules. So if you have an accounts payable account, we can restrict it only to the purchasing module, which means users can only look up the account in that module. And then here you'll notice our user-defined fields 1, 2, 3, and 4. These user-defined fields are the fields we defined in our general settings window. At the bottom here, you'll see summary. This is just your summary information, period, balance, inquiry screen, and you can view all your open years. Here you have your net change and your period balance. If we move to 2017, let's see, 2018. Here you can see the difference. So here we have a debit of $25,500, a credit of $24,500. That gives us a net change for the period of $1,000, where the period balance for that period is $24,500, because the period balance also includes the beginning balance. If you want to look up historical information, sorry, I clicked a little fast there, we have the history button. We'll click there. Here, this allows you to view the same summary information, but for any historical years. So these, remember, are any years that you have run the year-end close process. You have the budget button. This budget button allows you to pick a specific budget and allows you to view the budget for that specific account. Any budget maintenance that you're going to do, you'll want to, for a specific account, you'll want to do here. We'll review more in detail the budget in the GL Advanced class. We have the analysis button. This is for multidimensional analysis. This will be covered at a later date. And then we have the currency button, and this is multi-currency. Somebody has a question about the icons next to the account. The magnifying glass is the lookup screen, so this allows you to look up the accounts that already exist within the system and the company. You have your note button here. This allows you to add a note to the record. So you're adding a note specific to the account number here, 0002110, where the note field down here allows you to add a note to the whole window. So if there are certain procedures that you want taken, you can add the note to the window, and that can be used by your data entry people for reference. You have the little expansion button here. This just opens the account entry screen. It gives you the alias and the account number. And here is the organizational structure assignment button. This allows you to provide security, account security. Most clients don't use account security at this time because the organizational structure is very limited. Once you've created your account, you just click on Save, and that'll save your posting account. Here's your printer icon. Here, this is just going to show you the posting account information if you need to print it out for that account. Next, we're going to set up unit accounts. So we're going to go to Cards, Financial, and then Unit Account. Unit accounts are non-financial accounts, which means they allow one-sided journal entries. Unit accounts are usually used for square footage, number of employees, and are used in variable and fixed allocation accounts to determine the percentage that's applied to them. So here you can see we already have a few set up. I'm going to select this employee account for accounting. So you can see the account number is still the same. The structure is exactly like a posting account. You have your description, which is required, and your alias, which speeds up data entry, remember. You'll notice there is no category because it does not, again, affect your financials. You have your lookup screen, which modules you can look up the account. We have sales and purchasing. Over here, you can see that we can inactivate the account just like we can a posting account. And we have the same buttons beside the account number. We have the magnifying glass, the account alias entry window, which is the blue expansion button, the note field, and the organizational structure. With the unit account, you can determine how many decimal places you are allowing for the unit account. For example, when you do an employee account, you don't count half people. So I usually say you have 0 decimal places. If you're doing square footage, you'd probably have 2 decimal places. Here you have the year. So here we can look up any period balances or unit changes for the unit accounts. This checkbox here is new to GP 2013, and makes the system determine whether you're going to clear the balance during the year-end close process. So are you going to treat this unit account similar to a P&L account in the fact that you're going to start fresh the new year? Expenses at the beginning of the year have a 0 balance. You're going to have 0 balances for your unit accounts if the box is checked. You can view historical information for the unit account by clicking on the History button. You select the historical year, and then you can view the information here. And then you can budget your unit accounts. So here, just like before with posting accounts, our unit account defaults, we select our budget ID, and then we can see the budget information below. Once you've entered your unit account, you click on Save, and you've entered your unit account. Please remember, a unit account is not a financial account, so it can be entered as a one-sided journal entry, which we'll go over in a little bit. Any questions? All right. Variable allocation accounts and fixed allocation accounts are reviewed in the GL Advanced class. So next, we're going to discuss GL journal entries. First, I want to review how you can post a transaction. So here I'm going to go under Transactions. I'm going to click on the little expansion button here. There are 4 ways you can post a journal entry in GP. You can post at the transaction level, which restricts what access you have with reviewing your journal entries prior to posting. You cannot save a transaction if you're doing transaction level posting. We can do batches, which means we can save multiple journal entries or a single journal entry to a batch, save the batch, and post later. You can do series posting, which allows you to post multiple batches at one time in the series. So for example, in the financial series, we'd be able to enter all of our outstanding batches that either we entered in the GL or that have posted to the GL. And then lastly, you have your master posting. To get to the master posting, you're going to go to GP, Tools, Routines, Master Posting. Here you'll notice you have all the batches that are open in GP in every module. So here we have the sales module. We can see this enter match batch is a purchasing batch. And we can see some GL batches here as well. These batches can all be posted at the same time through the master posting window. Next, let's talk about one new feature in the batches. So here, I'm going to go under Transactions and then Batches. Here you can see a batch ID is required, so I'm going to enter in training. We have our origin type, general entry, clearing entry, or budget transaction. I'm going to select general entry at this moment in time. If you have a comment that you would like to attach to the batch ID, you can enter it here in the comment field. You have your frequency, so if you want to have a reoccurring batch, for example, you would have a reoccurring batch for accruals or any allocations that you might do. You may have reoccurring batch in the GL. Your frequency can be single use, weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, and miscellaneous. The frequency determines the date adjustment. So for example, if we do a recurring batch on a monthly basis, we enter in our transactions with a date of 3/21/2013. Once that batch is posted, it will be updated with a new transaction date of 4/21/2013. All right. So here I'm just going to say monthly. Here we have a few check boxes. We have the breakdown allocation box, which you'll want to have checked. This will allow the system to print the posting journals with the actual posting accounts that are used in the fixed and variable allocation accounts. You have clear reoccurring amounts. This allows you to create a journal entry that you know you're going to use the same accounts every month, but the amounts might vary. So you say, okay, after I post this batch, I want the batch to stay out there, but I want you to clear the reoccurring amounts. And then you have the reoccurring posting field. The reoccurring posting field tells the system how many times you can post the batch. So for instance, if I have 0 here, it doesn't mean I can't post it 0 times. 0 actually is defined as unlimited. So the system will always have the batch out there forever. If you did a reoccurring batch, say for rent expense, you may have it set to only 12. So once it's posted 12 times, the batch disappears. You've completed the reoccurring batch. If I change the frequency to miscellaneous, you'll notice that this days to increment window becomes available. This actually allows you to tell the system a different date increment. So say you want the batch to increment every 17 days. We can type in days to increment 17. So you're not restricted to either it being weekly, bi-weekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. You can actually specify how many days. If I want it to be 45 days, I can say I want it to increment by 45 days. If you want it to be every other month, you could say 60 days, for example. Over on the right side here, we have last date posted and times posted. This is informational for reoccurring batches. Last date posted is going to be, say for example, if we post it today, would be 3/21/2013. This gives you the information on have I posted it this month or have I not. And then you have your times posted. This is going to then relate back to how many times you're allowing it to reoccur. So for instance, if I have it set to 12 and I post this batch 6 times, it's going to say times posted 6, and I know I can only post it 6 more times before the batch disappears. You have your journal entry controls and actuals and your batch total. Your journal entry control is a count. So if you have 5 journal entries, you would see 5 as the number here. Under batch total, this is the total of your debits and credits. It's combining the two. It is not one-sided. I've had clients call me in the past and say, my batch doesn't tie to my transactions. Actually, it does. It's just adding your debits and your credits together. And then if I allowed batch approval, you would see the batch approval information here. There would be a little checkbox. You would check the approval box. It would ask you for an enter password if a password was required, and then it would assign your name and the date that you approved the batch. New in GP 2013, it now keeps track of that information, which is really nice, separate from who modified the journal entries last. Any questions on the batch window? You will notice some extra windows here that say workflow. This is for the workflow module that allows you to submit batches for approval notifications down a defined workflow. So next we're going to click on transactions. Here we have our journal entry number. This default number here appeared from the general settings setup window. We have our little comment note button if you want to enter a comment about why you're entering the journal entry. We have the intercompany box, which will be discussed at a later date, but you just click on this and it allows you to do intercompany transactions between multiple companies in your system. You have your batch ID, your transaction type, so we can enter either a standard transaction or a reversing transaction. If I select reversing, you'll notice the reversing date over here becomes available. I can assign my transaction date to be today's date. And then, let's see, let's try that one more time. And then I can have my reversing date be the following month. You're going to want to use reversing transactions for typical transactions are going to be like your accruals. So you're accruing an expense this month, you want to reverse it back out next month. So here I'm going to say 05. When you post a reversing journal entry, it does not post the transaction today and then wait a month and then reverse the transaction on the date that you set as your reversing date. Both periods have to be open. Both dates have to be available for posting. When you post the journal entry, it'll post the original transaction, in my example on 4/12, and then at the same time it'll post the reversing entry on 5/12. The source document. I usually suggest you keep this the same, and it defaults in for you GJ. Depending on how your system's set up, it may default to another code, but you can change it. I do have some clients that have it set up so that they can identify imported transactions separately from ones that were entered by hand and so forth. Usually you'll see here in the source document, it's going to tell you which subsidiary module also that the transaction came from. So if you're posting your payables invoices through to the general ledger, your source document is most likely going to start with PM. You have your reference to the journal entry. So here, I'm going to enter a journal entry for my accruals for April. If you use multi-currency, here you could select your currency ID. Here I'm going to enter in my accrual, entering in 0002110, which is the account we actually reviewed when we were setting up the account, and we're going to credit it for $25,000. A shortcut so that when you guys are entering is if you want to quickly enter in a dollar value, if you say $12, you would hit 1, 2, and then instead of hitting the 0 button 2 more times, you can just click on the period button and it'll advance it to be $12. So I'm going to make this $25,000. Then we have expense account here for $20,000. and another expense account for $5,000. Here you'll notice my total is $25,000 for my debits. My total for my credits is $25,000, and I have a difference of 0. Let's look up a unit account. Let's see. Here we have the employee accounting unit account. And you'll notice that when we set it up with 0 decimal places, so I have 0 decimal places here. Say I want to increase that unit account by 5. I wanted to show you guys that when you enter in a unit account in your journal entry window, you'll notice it does not affect your total debits and credits. And remember, that's because it's a non-financial account. So you're still in balance of $25,000. When you're entering in a journal entry for a unit account, a debit increases the account and a credit decreases the account. If you're doing a journal entry, so let's see here, and you decide, oh no, I don't want that account in my journal entry, we can highlight the account. New in GP 2010 and 2013, you can right click and say delete row. You can say, are you sure you want to delete? We say yes, we want to delete, and it deletes the row for us. You'll notice also here at the bottom of the screen we have a status, and this shows us that the journal entry is unposted. Any questions about entering a journal entry? Next, I wanted to show you how to enter a clearing entry. So we're going to go to Financial and then Clearing. A clearing entry simply moves the balance from one account to another. The example that a lot of people give is, say you have a promotion going on and the promotion ends. Well, for the 2 months that you were running the promotion, you wanted to keep track of the detail behind that promotion, but now you're done with the promotion, you want to move it to the generic account. So you can then move the balance from the promotion account, specific promotion account, to a generic account. Here we have your journal entry number. If you want to assign it to a batch ID, you can assign it here. You have your transaction date, your source document, and then you can enter your reference. Another good example of wanting to use clearing entries, say your department numbers change, you can clear your department numbers for all of your department 10 and move them to department 20. Here you have a choice. Do you want to clear out the year-to-date balance or just a transaction period balance? So I'm going to choose year-to-date balance. Here I'm going to say I want to move, I'm just going to click accounts payable multi-currency transaction. I'm going to move that to my accounts payable account. Now, the options for my accounts are not very realistic, but I wanted to show you how here on the left side you select what account you are clearing, and then on the right side you're selecting what account you want to move the balance to. And then to post the transaction, I can simply click on Post. Now, if I have a batch ID identified here, let me add one here, and I click on Post, it's going to tell me you cannot post a clearing entry that's assigned to a batch because it's you need to go to the batch posting window. Is that somebody had asked to expand the screen so it was a little bit bigger. Is that good? I hope so. So here we have the post screen. I'm going to close some of my windows here. All right. Any questions about clearing journal entries? The last journal entry transactions you can make are budget transactions. Starting in GP 2010, you can now keep track of your adjustments. So you have an audit trail code to all your budget transactions. Here, my budget journal entry is 1. This is defaulting from the general setup window. We can identify a batch. Click Add. Here you can notice that my origin is budget transactions. Select, I enter my transaction date, budget ID, can enter in a reference. I can select my account. I can choose my percentage. Do I want to do a percentage change, an amount set, or set budget amount? I'm going to choose set budget amount. Say increase by 500. And I'm going to click on calculate. You'll notice when I did that, the net change for each month below increased each period by $500. I look here at period balances. You'll notice it says 500. The next period, period 2, is 1,000. Following period 2, period 3 has 1,500. So it increments each amount by 500. Now once I click on post, remove my batch ID, click on post. I've now posted my budget. When you do a transaction level posting, your posting journals are not going to print until you close the window. So I click to close the window. Now it's asking me, where do I want to print my reports? I'm going to choose printer this time just to show you guys a new feature in GP 2013. And that is the fact that now we can select what printer we want them to print to. And this is where everybody cheers because it's so exciting. So here you can select your printer and then you click print. I printed to a PDF writer, so it's asking me for the location that I want to print the posting journal to. And we can browse out and you can see here is my PDF that I just printed. All right. To post a batch, I simply open the batch entry window again. So I go to transactions and then batches. I select my batch. Let's see. And then I can click on post. You'll notice here I had entered a journal entry for $500 on each side. And the GL batch now says journal entry account 1, batch total is 1,000. I'm going to choose to print these to screen. You'll notice too, starting I believe in GP 2010, it may have been GP 10, you have your report type. You can print now to Word templates. So you have your options of standard or template depending on whether you have Word templates deployed. I'm going to leave it at the default of standard. And then here you can see my journal entry. Then we want to print those out for our records and then close the window. Any questions on the posting journal here? Right, we're flying through the material. All right, next thing we want to talk about are inquiry screens and reports. So I'm going to first expand here the window for inquiries. Somebody says, how do I look up a batch once it's posted? Is the batch ID still there? You can't look up total batches. You can look up the journal entries. You can look up from either the detail account window or the journal entry inquiry window, but you can't pull up a whole entire batch once it's posted. Usually if, for instance, a batch posts, something happens and the posting journals didn't print, you can print a cross-reference report, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, for the journal entries, and that'll reprint for you and give you the detail. So here under inquiry, the main journal entry inquiry windows that I use are the summary inquiry window. This window, when pulling up an account, will show you your period balances, your total debits and credits for each period for an account. Here you can pick any open year. So I can choose 2014 through 2018 at this time in my image. I have also the detail window. This is going to show you by transaction. So pull up an account, you can see all the transactions that have posted to that account for the current fiscal year or any fiscal year that's open. You can do restrictions. I only want to see what's in for, just say, February. Once you enter in your restrictions, you're going to want to click on Read Display. And this will show you only those journal entries that were affected in February. You can choose, I only want to see the ones that maybe were entered in the GL. So here we can select General Journal and click Read Display. And thankfully, with our accounts payable account, we have 0 transactions. Or I can say I want to see which ones were I want to see invoices, so I'm going to select payables transactions here. And no transactions were entered. So we're going to say all, click Read Display. You have these expansion buttons here. So at first, all I'm seeing for each record is the date, journal entry, debit, credit. If I want to see the audit trail code, source document, reference, and currency ID, I do need to click on the little Show Details button here at the bottom. So here I can see here's some purchase order invoices, some payables checks as well. You may wonder what this button here, the little dollars with the coins on the left side is. This is for multi-currency. So if you want to view, if you have multi-currency inactivated, you want to know the functional currency. So this is the currency assigned to the company. Originating currency would show the transactions and the currency that they originated in. So it could be pounds, Swiss francs, so forth. And then you can choose reporting, which we have a reporting currency set up to be Canadian dollars in this system. If you want to print this detail, you can click on the little printer icon. This is going to print our detail inquiry. We can click to screen, and you can see here's all the transactions for the month of February in a report. You can do the same thing in a payables. It may not show you the source document or the currency ID in your trial balance when you print it. Another one that I like to use is account roll-up. So we click on account roll-up here. I'm going to click modify. I'm going to create a new option. So I'm going to want to pull in all my revenue accounts. I just want to see how the company is doing. I create my option ID. It can be anything that you want it to be. It can be alphanumeric. You can sort by department, account, or division, my 3 segments. So I'm going to say to sort by department. I need to tell the account roll-up how many columns I want. You can have up to 4 columns in an account roll-up. So I'm going to select all 4 to show you all of the options. See if I can make this screen a little bit bigger. GP sometimes lets you make the windows bigger. For column 1, I'm going to call it actuals. I can put in I want specific accounts. Do I want them to be posting or unit? I'm going to say include posting. I'm going to say I want to restrict my segment from account to my revenues, which I believe start with 4. I'm going to click on insert. If the restrictions window is blank, it will pull nothing. So you want to click insert here. For column 2, I'm going to make this my budget. Type budget. For selection, you'll see this field becomes available. I need to select what budget ID I want to pull. For column 3, I'm going to pull a calculation. I'll call this my variance. You'll see the expansion button becomes available, so I'm going to click on the expansion button beside selection. And here I can enter in my calculation. So budget, and then you have to click the little double caret, side caret here to insert. So I'm going to pull budget, and then I'm going to click on the minus symbol here, and then I'm going to say minus actuals. I'm going to click on insert, and this will give me my variance. And then I'm going to pull previous year. And I'm going to say previous year. All right. Once I click on save, I then can close this window. Click redisplay. And now I have my actuals for my revenue, my budget, my variance, and my previous year information. You'll notice my display defaults to net change. Why does it default to net change? Because in my setup window, so if we go back to General Ledger Setup, you'll see that display here is set to default. So if we want to view period balances, we can just click on period balances. Any questions about account roll-up? Another good thing about account roll-up, so if I want to modify the current option that I've created, I click on this modify button. You can have multiple restrictions. So you can do a range, say from 40, I want to pull divisions or department 100 to 300 as well. So you can do multiple restrictions to define it even further. To view historical year information, you'll go to the history summary windows. So this will pull up accounts payable. And when we pull the drop down here, you can see these are my historical years, 2010 to 2013. Right, it's showing the same information as the summary and inquiry screen for open years. It's just a different window you have to go for historical. And then for journal entry inquiry screens, here we have you select your journal entry. Good thing about GP 2013, a new feature, is now you can view historical transactions. Yay! Before you had to go about this roundabout way. You had to look up the account, and then you had to click on the journal entry to be able to view the actual journal entry for an historical transaction. But now we can just pull them up here in the lookup screen. All right, and we can see our account information here with the debits and the credit information. Another cool journal entry is this budget versus actual, so we can pull up an account. And see how administration is doing on their budget to actuals for a specific account. Next, I was going to talk about reports. So I'm going to go over here to the right side and click my expansion on reports. The first two options here, or first three options, to be honest with you, financial statements, quick financials, and advanced financials, are not normally used in GP with our clients. Usually they're using Management Reporter or FRX. Remember, the accelerator information we defined in the setup does affect your quick financials, as well as your account categories. In GP 2013, it allows you now to drill back to Management Reporter. Any previous version to 2013, you saw FRX. Most people print trial balance reports. So here you click on trial balance. Our report options are detailed, summary, worksheet, quick detail, quick summary. The two I mostly use are detailed and summary. Every report option has to have at least, let me rephrase, every report in GP has to have at least one option defined. So here we have demo, but you have to have at least one to be able to print the report. If you see a blank window here, you can always click on new. Click on the new option. We can define the option. So I'm going to name my option Stacy. Here, include posting accounts. We want to include posting accounts. Do we want to include unit accounts? Inactive accounts, I usually have inactive accounts checked. Do you want to include on your report accounts with zero balances or no transactions? And then lastly, if you use multi-currency, do you want to include the multi-currency information? You have your sort by. So this is going to allow you to sort by your segments defined for your account. And then you have subtotal by. You have no subtotals, month, and period. I do want to state that the month and period subtotal by actually print a separate report in GP. So if you run the report with no subtotals, and then you run it with a period subtotal, and you see a variation in what columns are being used in the report, it's because that report writer is pulling two different reports. Here we're choosing what year we want to print the report. So I'm going to keep it at open. If you select current, it's going to be the most recent open year. So what I mean by that is when I click on current, it's actually going to print 2018. And then we have history. So if any closed historical years you'll want to print, you'll select history. Print currency in. This is available for clients who use multi-currency. You're choosing to print in a functional currency or in your reporting currency. You can do restrictions on the data that's pulled in the trial balance report. You can only have one restriction per range. What I mean by that is you can't say I want account 100 to 1500, and account 3100 to 3500. You can only have one range. So here we can say date. I'm going to restrict it only to, I'm going to do an open year of 2017 to February. A quick little tip when you're entering in dates, if you do 0201, it's going to pull in the date that is your system date for the year. So all I had to type in was 0201. It filled in the 2013 for me. Because my system is 2017, I'm going to type in the whole account here. I'm going to go to 2017. I'll click on insert. I'm going to restrict my trial balance to only one division or department. I'll do department. We'll say accounting. Starting, I believe, in GP 2010, you have your email options. So that allows you to email the reports out to individuals. You have your destination. So you want it to be screen, printer, or file. Once again, you have a report type. So those available to use Word templates, you can choose to print to a Word template here. We're going to click OK. And then I'm going to click Save just to keep the report option. And then to print it, you just simply click on Print. Somebody asked, will email just work, or does it have to be set up? Unfortunately, it has to be set up. You have to set up what profile, if you have a profile, what profile it's going to be set up from, what your email options are, so forth. So we're going to click on Print. I'm going to print to my PDF again. And I'm going to click Save. Any questions about the trial balance report? Another report I wanted to go over is cross-reference. So here we have our report options, or journal entry, source document, our audit trail code. This is a way you can reprint your posting journals for if any reason they did not print. I'll click on journal entry here, and then on options, I'm going to click on the one that's already set up. I'm going to click on modify. Here, an option includes posting accounts, unit accounts, or voided transactions. I'm going to select only include posting accounts. You can choose your year, hit open or historical. I'm going to go with open. And then you can choose your journal entry number. Let's try, we can do a range. Let me look up a range real quick. There we go. I'm going to do a range, a more recent range. Let's do 3437 to 3447. So go back to my report options here. I'm going to select journal entry 3437 to journal entry 3447. These were in the year 2018. So I'm going to enter my restriction here. Once again, you do have the option to email or print to a destination. So I'm just going to choose screen. I'm going to click on print. And then here it gives you the journal entry information. So we have our journal entry number, our accounts, the transaction date, source document, the description of our accounts, and our debits and credits. Any questions about the cross-reference report? All right, the last thing I wanted to go over with everyone today was the period close. The period close in GP is not a hard close. You can open and close the periods as necessary. I like to reference this as a soft close. Steps you typically take when you're running a period close: you're going to want to make sure all your transactions and your submodules are posted. You're going to want to make sure all your journal transactions for the period are posted. You'll want to print any trial balance reports or financial statements for the period. Make sure you file those reports into a binder, and then you'll be ready to close the period. To close the period, I'm going to go to the bottom here and I'm going to browse to administration. I'm going to shrink system here. We're going to browse to company and then physical periods. Here we're going to select the year, so we're currently in 2017. And then I can choose what modules I want to close for the period. So here I can click on financial, I can click on sales, I can click on purchasing. This flexibility allows you to close certain modules before you close financials. For example, some people close their payables modules by the 15th of the next month. We can close purchasing that day, and then when we've verified all of our information, we've run our financial statements, everything looks great, we can then go back in and close the financial series. Somebody asked, who has access to this screen, and can anybody open and close periods? It really depends on your security setup. If your user has access to the window, then they can open and close periods at will. Most of our clients restrict access to windows such as this for senior accountants or account managers. We set them up with security, and that will prevent other users from accessing the window. We have this mask close button in the bottom right corner. This allows you to restrict even specific what windows. So if I want to go, say, to purchasing, I can say I want to close the purchasing payables transactions. I can close printing checks for a period here. So this allows restrictions into actual specific windows. Periods can be open and closed at any time. So if you need to reopen the period, you simply just come into this window and you uncheck the box. Somebody asked, how many periods can I have open at once? You can have as many periods as you want open at a time. Usually what I suggest is that if you have, say we're in 2017 right now and the system has 2018, I like to say close all and close all of 2018. And then, so 2018 is closed, and then I usually suggest closing all the periods you don't want to be posted to at that time. That'll prevent users from entering in incorrect dates. A good example being, say I'm not ready to run the year-end close process for 2016 yet. It is now January 1 of 2017. I usually suggest at least coming in here and going into 2016 and closing the period for January so that users by habit aren't entering in 2016. They're actually typing in 2017. Another question is there any order of which modules should be closed? For the period close process, no. You can close whatever series you want in any order that you want. Now, later in the GL Advanced class, they'll go over the year-end close process, and there is a specific order in which you want to close the periods, or close the calendar or fiscal year. You always want to do your submodules for your year-end close before you do your GL. Any questions about physical period close? Right? Well, we have about another 45 minutes available for the class. So I'm going to take this time to go over some additional things. I want to go over SmartList. SmartList is one of my all-time favorites. It's always where I go first for a lot of things. To get to SmartList, you can simply go to GP and then SmartList. Usually people have shortcuts on their screen. Let's see here. I can get them to show up. Here we go. So I have the standard toolbar selected up here. You see the little light bulb with the paper. That's also a quick way to get to your SmartList. Here, GP has a lot of out-of-the-box smart lists and are divided up by series. So here we have our financial series, we have our payables series, which is under purchasing, we have sales for receivables, payroll, for example, so forth. For financials, you can see it has defaults for accounts. I like to use this for printing the chart of accounts to Excel, or I also use this account smart list at year-end close to verify that all my accounts are set up with the correct posting type. Here you'll notice the account. Let me expand this window here. Here in the bottom left is the total number of records that were returned. So I have 519 accounts. This middle section here, completed, shows you the status. So we have completed, in process, or exploring, I believe is what the in process state is called. And then here is your record limitation. So here I say first 1,000 records with no search criteria. This is by default 1,000. Usually, say if you're pulling an account transaction list and purchasing, pulling payables invoices for the year, you're probably going to want to expand your record limitation from 1,000. To do so, you just click on the search button in the bottom or the top left, excuse me. Here and at the bottom of that window, under search options, you take the maximum records and you can make it 1 billion. They used to say that you don't want to make the maximum records just automatically 1 billion because it'll slow down the system. But I personally have not seen a deficiency in the system when you choose 1 billion. Like I personally cannot see a slowdown of the system. So I usually select 1 billion myself. Here, your search type, you have match all or match one or more. That's dealing with the search criteria here. You can have up to 4 search definitions per smart list. So here I can say I only want account posting type of balance sheet. If you want to compare 2 fields, say if in an account transaction window, here if you want to pull in, you want to compare the, say, transaction date, and you want to compare it to the posting date of the original transaction, say originating posted date, you can do so. So that allows you to compare 2 fields in the smart list. Let's see, let's go back to accounts here. So I selected my first criteria is posting type. It's equal to balance sheet. When you notice I have the selected columns and then on the drop down I have all columns. Selected columns are the columns that appear in the smart list, where available columns or all columns are the columns that are available to the search criteria that you're currently selecting. So I'm going to go back to selected, and I'm going to say account number is greater than, I'm going to say 0004. Right? And then I have two more search definitions that I can select. Now, if I have a search type which defaults to match all, which most people use, it requires that both my first definition and my second definition are set to true. Where if I say match one or more, it's going to match either search definition 1 or search definition 2. So I'm going to stick with match all. I'm going to click OK. And then here you can see I have some accounts that are marked as balance sheet. Maybe that shouldn't be. So billings in excess of earnings. I have a utilities expense account that's marked as balance sheet. That should probably be changed to profit and loss before I run the year-end close process. We have our columns button in the top left here. This originally shows you the counts, the columns that are currently selected for your smart list. Here we can reorder them. So say I want account category before posting type, you can reorder them. The little arrow with the slash means to move it to the very top. Same goes for this bottom arrow with the little dash. That means to go to the very bottom. And then you have your increment up and down by 1 button. If I want to add, say I want to add typical balance, I usually find it easier if I know the column name or the field name to type it in and then just say find next, and it browses down for me. So I'm going to select typical balance, and then I can move these up and down as I want. So I can click OK. If you click on default here, this is going to default the columns back to their original column name orders. So say I want my account number not to say account, but I want to change the display name to account. I can simply highlight account number and type in account. Click OK here. And now I have changed my display to account and then added the column typical display. Since this is one that I typically use at year end, I like to save this as a favorite. To save it as a favorite, you just click on the favorites button. You give your smart list a name. So I'm going to say P&L accounts marked as balance sheet. You have a visible to, that's system, company, user class, or user ID. If you select system, it's available to everyone in every company that you have defined in your system. If it's visible to company, it's specific to the one that I am currently logged into. So here it would only be available to Fabricam. You have user classes. This is one of those few places where user classes is used in GP. So anybody assigned to your user class that's assigned to you would have access to the smart list. And then finally user ID, which means it's only available to you. So I'm going to say system. Here you have the option to add the favorite, which just adds it to the smart list on your left here. Or you can say add favorite and reminder. So if you want a reminder to run this smart list on the 15th of every month, we can set up a reminder that will pop up in GP when you're logged in. And it'll also show on your home screen. So I'm just going to click on add favorite. You'll notice now I have my favorite here. It says P&L accounts marked as balance sheet. You'll also notice it does not have an asterisk beside it. This tells me that this was a favorite that somebody used, where if you see ones that have the asterisk at the end, most likely that is a system created or out-of-the-box smart list created by GP. If you want to modify any of your saved smart lists at any time, you simply click. So I want to change the columns here. I'm going to remove typical balance. To now save this for my smart list, I just click on favorites and I click on modify. And now my smart list is modified not to include the typical balance column. And then further, you can now print your smart list. You can export it to Excel, or you can export it to Word. When you're exporting, it'll then tell you your status, how many rows are remaining. So I did Word here, and you can see it's not as attractive as if you had done Excel. Any questions about smart lists? Or smart list favorites? Right, well, that is the conclusion of our class. Somebody asked, do I have to use a batch ID when entering transactions? Or why should I use a batch? All right, a batch ID is not required unless it's required by the system. And what I mean by that is if we go under administration and then we go under posting and then posting, and we select the series. So if we click financial, and select the general entry screen. Here you have allow transaction posting here on the left middle. If this box is checked, that means that you can post a transaction without a batch ID. If this box is unchecked, this means you can only save transactions to a batch and post the batch. This person also had a question about why should you use batches. I use batches because you can enter and save. You can enter the transaction and save the batch, save the transaction to a batch for later review. You can print edit lists. A user can enter a journal entry, save it. Another user can review it, approve it, and post it. Most people do batch level posting. They do not do transaction level posting. You cannot print an edit list for transaction level posting. So you need a batch ID defined for those. Can I copy and paste a journal entry from Excel? Unfortunately, GP has not created that functionality yet. You cannot copy and paste a journal entry from Excel into GP. We use a product called Integration Manager, and that product allows you to take tab delimited or comma delimited files and import them, and typically that's what most of our clients will use for any large journal entries that they make from maybe a third-party system. For example, if you have a membership database or a customer relationship sales database, you can use Integration Manager to import those transactions. Can I prevent users from posting journal entries? Yes, you can prevent users from posting journal entries using your security setup. You can prevent them from having specific posting. So you can even say this person has access to post in payables, but they don't have access to post in the general ledger. I did not go over quick journals. Quick journals are another way to have a transaction saved that you can use on a regular basis. So if you have, say, an allocation journal entry you want to enter, you can use quick journals. And I believe that's reviewed in the advanced class. The next question was about approvals. I had discussed earlier that you can you can have batch approvals to make the system force a batch approval under administration, posting, see here, posting here. So go back to series financial, and my origin is going to be general entry. I can say require batch approval here. It's not going to let me do it in the system right now because I have workflow installed on this image, but you would select this box here and then you would enter in an approval password for the batch, and then it will provide you batch approval. It will not allow you to post the batch until it is approved once this box is checked. Somebody has a question, can I set up the batch approvals to email me when a batch is ready to be approved? If you have the workflow module installed and implemented, you can use the workflows. That'll tell you somebody can submit it for approval that way. Somebody asked, can somebody make changes after it is approved? No, once the box is checked that the batch is approved, edits to the transaction cannot be made. You'd have to simply uncheck the box saying it was approved, make your edits, and then somebody has to go in and click approved again and enter their password again. Somebody's asking, how can I correct a journal entry that's been posted? To correct a journal entry, you go into Transactions, Financial, General. You select your journal entry. So this says your next journal entry number is 3526. To correct it, I click on the Correct button here. Under Actions, I have two options. I have back out a journal entry and back out and create a correcting entry. So here I'm going to say back out journal entry and create the correcting journal entry. And then you can select, here's your originating journal entry year. And this is going to be any open year that you have. You cannot back out and correct a journal entry from a historical year. You'd actually have to manually enter those backouts. So I'll select 2018 here. And then you select your originating journal entry ID number. I'm trying to find one that's not a submodule journal entry to show you. Let's see here. Let's go with, I think 2014 might have some. Here we go. Here I can select the original journal entry and I click OK. The first thing that shows up in your correcting journal entry is the back out. So here we have our credit to savings and our debit to interest income. That's what it said. Yeah, interest income. And then since we require batch ID, I'm going to put batch ID in here. If you enter in a batch ID that doesn't exist, it will say, do you want to add this batch? You simply just click add, and then you can click save. Here. Once I save it, the next journal entry that pops up is my correcting journal entry, which really is just the original journal entry that you entered. So say I made an error in the amount. I can then do my correcting journal amount here. if you entered the wrong account, you can make your modifications to your accounts here as well. And then I can save this to be posted later as well. That is how you hit a correcting entry. Somebody had another question about copying. You can click on copy. This allows you to copy a journal entry. This is a good example of, say you have 1 month, this long journal entry that you think is only going to happen that one time, so you didn't set it up as a reoccurring batch transaction, or you didn't set it up as a quick journal. The next month comes around, and look, here's the journal entry I need to enter again. You can simply just go in, select your journal entry. We'll go up to the very top here. Select the journal entry. This is telling me that it's a subsidiary module journal entry. For right now, we'll just ignore that and we'll click OK. We can click OK. Well, it's not going to let me. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find one. I don't see any GL entries here for 2017. Let me change this to 2014. Here I can select my originating journal entry and then I can click OK. If you're wondering what this copy analytical accounting information is, it's a new feature in GP 2013 with the AA module that actually lets you copy the AA distribution information as well. So I'm just going to click OK here, and it's copied my journal entry. You'll notice that the date is the date of the original copy, and I'm just going to change it to today's date. And then you'll also notice that the reference is blanked out, and you'll need to enter a reference as well. Any other questions anybody may have? All right. Well, that is the end of our GL Basics class. Please join us in the near future for our GL Advanced class, which will go over some additional record maintenance and journal entry information.